The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening. Hey there. Welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters, writers, editors, photographers, filmmakers, anybody who puts something out in the Bronx. And this evening in our second segment, we're going to do something a lot of fun. There's a film, a local film that is being made into a play. And we're going to talk with the people who put that out in the borough of the Bronx. But to get started, we're going to go to a reporter. She is the North Brooklyn reporter at the Brooklyn paper. And so I'll say good evening to Kirsten Brenlin. Nice to have you back with us.
Hey, Gary. Yeah, nice to be back. Thank you.
And for anybody who says, but Gary, why are we talking to Brooklyn when it comes to the Bronx? Kirsten wrote a fascinating 5-part series called The Race to Deliver, and it was featured in the Bronx Times. And it is a series about these grocery delivery apps, which are doing all kinds of interesting things to, as you can see, there may be local store owners, and has implications for a lot of other things other than just maybe making it more convenient for people to buy groceries. So I will start this way, Kirsten. We have learned a lot of things from the pandemic. Among them is that we can do things a little faster, a little more convenient. We can order online staples like groceries. However, you have unveiled a whole series of issues. Why don't you talk about the theory behind putting this together and what you had identified, and then we'll break down some of the issues.
Yeah. So it's funny. I actually can't take credit for the initial idea. That was actually from our publisher, CEO, Josh Schneps.
You're so kind. Thank you for doing that. That's okay.
Well,
That's appropriate.
I don't want to take credit for the initial idea, because I think that AM New York was sort of among the first publications to be on the story. And that was sort of a great idea from him. And then we broke it down sort of between me and Gabrielle Holterman, who is the other reporter, photographer who's working on the series with me, and Rob, who's the editor of AM New York. Sort of broke it out into like, what are all the big issues that we can see with it? Like how many parts should it be, and what should each one cover? So right now what we have out, the first one is sort of just very general, like an introduction to like they're called quick commerce delivery apps, sort of as a concept for anyone who might not be familiar. The next one was a price comparison. So Gabby and I both went into grocery stores that are inside of their coverage areas.
Why don't we start there? Is it in plain language? Is it cheaper? Now we understand you're paying for some convenience and you're paying for delivery, and that's got to be factored in regardless of how they charge you, whether they charge you for the delivery or per item. Right. Does it make sense, or are you really better off, doing what you used to do, getting up, put your mask on, and go to the grocery store?
Right. It kind of depends. So a lot of the stuff was pretty comparable. And we tried to keep it sort of to staples. We looked at canned goods, eggs, milk, like bananas, that kind of thing. And a lot of it was either the same or pretty similar. Something that we both had noticed, though, across a couple of different apps, was that the brands that they carry can be pretty different from what you have in the store. So if you usually are going to be looking for, like the store brand, anything, eggs, anything that's usually a little bit cheaper, they didn't have it. And then some of their products are just like a little fancier. That's sort of like,
that's very interesting. I'm just thinking conceptually how it happens. So they're going to buy from a big company that so instead of going to and getting the Food Town apple juice, which may be a couple of cents cheaper, or even more than a couple of cents cheaper, they're going to get the Mott's, and that's what you've got to buy.
Exactly.
Right. So in that's very interesting. Did you buy all the stuff, or did you just simply price it out? I was thinking
So
if we opened up, you could probably open up your own app and start sending out groceries.
right. So Gabby actually ordered the stuff. I tried. I was at a friend's apartment in Long Island City, and then once I got to the end of the process, discovered that I was actually outside of the range. So
Oh,
I
so you
was
couldn't get it.
spared from making
Oh,
the
okay.
full order.
I thought you could order the groceries for your friend's apartment and let him have all
Right.
that stuff.
I
Um,
was going to, but
so that's the first thing, is that it's comparable, but you may not get the selection that you want that might give you a chance to get it cheaper. So that's
right.
one thing. That is logical. The other thing, which of course is major, is the notion of is it competing with bodegas? And I'll use this example. If you go to Kingsbridge Road and you have all the street sellers, and the people
Hmm.
who have stores are saying, wait a minute, they're selling hats and jackets and sneakers and all these things that we're paying rent for. That's not right. Well, here's somebody who's selling all that stuff, maybe making it more convenient. We're paying for brick and mortar and employees.
Right.
And what happens? So how do we view that competition? Are the bodegas getting hurt? Which is, of course, vital in the borough of the Bronx. Tell me all about that.
Yeah. So the general consensus seems to be that it's kind of too early to tell. A lot of
Uh,
these places only launched over the summer. Bike, which is one of the ones that they just started opening in the Bronx, only launched in Manhattan in September. And another thing is that a lot of like sort of the neighborhoods where they're launching are sort of like younger and wealthier neighborhoods.
uh,
So it is pretty localized. Yeah. So like the reach that they have is pretty substantial at this point, but a lot of the launches were like in, Williamsburg, downtown Brooklyn, the financial district, the Upper East and West sides. But they are concerned about it. And I think the big thing is the speed is the thing that makes it like comparable to a bodega. Whereas like if you realize at home that you are trying to make brownies or something and you forgot eggs, you would maybe run down the block and pick up a carton of eggs and that'll take you 5 minutes. These apps allow you to do that same thing, but without leaving the apartment at all.
well,
Um,
but you're not getting it in 5 minutes, right? Or you
right.
are.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
it may
no,
I'm
so it's
assuming it
10,
takes a half a
15.
day, let's say, to place the order for them to process it and get it out. I thought, and I was talking with you about this before the show. Instacart is an interesting concept because rather than a company, like Amazon hires workers and they go out and they do the deliveries, Instacart just has people shopping. The stores don't even know that they're shopping, and they come and they deliver for you. That's another interesting concept for
Right.
for this whole thing, for what they're doing. Is that duplicated, or is that a single company that does that? In other words, are there other
Um,
companies that do it like that, as far as you know?
yeah, so I think I'm not the author. This is outside of my expertise.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
I'm sure that there are others that do similar things, and I also know, everyone knows like Fresh Direct, but they're delivering right from their warehouse in the Bronx.
Right, that's right.
I think like Stop and Shop has Peapod, but that's kind of the same thing where they're not sending people into stores; they're delivering to you right from their own
It's almost like a
stock.
a way of branding their normal delivery.
Right.
In
Exactly.
that way. You mentioned Fresh Direct. Is that the granddaddy of them all, that they basically invented this concept? And of course, that has direct Bronx ties.
Right.
Is Fresh Direct the one that before the pandemic had said, "Hey, here's a way that you can order groceries"?
Yeah, so it seems that way to me. I know they launched in the early 2000s, and I know that they really had the monopoly on it in New York City for a long time. And I drew the comparison in the first article because they are delivering from their own warehouse, which is the same as what these companies are doing, where they're delivering from their own much, much smaller and more numerous warehouses.
Hmm.
But yeah, that is, I don't know how long the typical Fresh Direct delivery takes, but with these apps, it's not even half a day. Most of them
Wow.
are within 15 minutes.
I
Um,
have to
so it's much
interject, and it's
shorter.
not
Yeah.
directly part of your purview in this series. And our producer Rebecca had shown pictures of people on motorbikes, and
Hmm.
that's another thing, that it puts all those bikes out there, and that's a whole traffic thing, and that's another thing to discuss. One of the other aspects of this that I thought was absolutely fascinating, had not considered, is the real estate notion and how it affects the real estate market. And you wrote one of your 5 is on that. Could you just maybe in 30 or 45 seconds explain what the effect of this is and could be as they grow and develop on real estate?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing that I focused on the most was sort of their ability to expand given the kind of real estate that they're looking for. So whereas, obviously a grocery store is looking for a significantly larger space, and a bodega might be the same thing. And both of those stores are also looking for somewhere where you have the space to make the store like welcoming and inviting for customers. Whereas these companies are looking for a relatively small space. They're called dark stores. They're basically like little warehouses. They're
That's
closed to the
right.
public.
Yeah.
So they want them in good, good neighborhoods. For their sort of what they're looking for, like dense neighborhoods with like their sort of target demographics. But they don't need to be right on the main street. They're not looking for a space that's going to be really welcoming to the public. So it is probably like a little bit cheaper and a little bit easier for them to find places to expand, which would be maybe more difficult.
Compared to somebody who wants to expand, a ShopRite, or in my
Right.
neighborhood is Garden Gourmet, which
Exactly.
started
Yeah.
out as a small place and then got bigger and bigger. They had to spend and do that. The last part of the series that's coming out is about how it affects the labor market. Seems to me you're getting people jobs. I guess the trickle down would be that maybe you're cutting back if the grocery stores have fewer customers or fewer purchases, then they're going to cut back on their employees.
Yeah. So honestly, that is an angle that I had not thought about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. A lot of what we have been sort of talking about as we're working on this last part is about, earlier in September, the city council had passed a package of bills. Those were protections for delivery workers, that focused on pay and how far people can travel and tips, access to bathrooms, because a lot of those companies, like if you're delivering for DoorDash or Uber Eats, you don't have an office or a centralized location you're going
That's
to. You're
right.
picking up from a restaurant and you're just sort of out all night. So we really want to look at like if those protections apply to these employees.
Hmm.
There's some differences because a lot of these companies, their employees are either full or part-time. They're not like
Right.
gig workers. So we want to look at, how does that impact your work when you are full or part-time rather than a
Right.
contractor?
To
And if
to
these
do
new
that.
laws apply.
Got it. Listen, Kirsten, we got to go. I want to thank you, of course, for joining us. I
Yeah.
noticed here on Bedford Park, there's a new warehouse, and you called it's Go Puff. Is that what it is? And they're also going to be
Yeah.
expanding the range, so you may be able to, instead of going to a CVS or a Walgreens or a Rite Aid, you may be able to do that. Listen, Kirsten, what a pleasure to reconnect with you. And I hope
Yes,
you
you
keep
too.
writing
Thank
stuff
you.
that lands in the Bronx, that's about the Bronx or related to the Bronx, and we'll have you back. How about that?
Yes. Yeah, that sounds great.
Great. You are just
Thank you.
wonderful, and keep up the fantastic work you're doing for the Brooklyn Reporter, AM New York, and then the trickle down, using that phrase again, is to the Bronx Times.
Yes. Yeah,
We'll
thank
see
you.
you around town. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Folks, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, as I said, we're going to do a thing with a play that is adapted from a local film. So you'll see it in a moment. Don't go away.